On May 20, 1941, the Germans began their airborne invasion on the island of Crete. It was called Operation Mercury. Fresh from their victory over Greece, Germany dropped soldiers by parachute, beginning the invasion. Aerial bombardments likewise commenced attacking Allied forces in Crete. Interdiction missions harassed units mobilizing to meet the invaders. Hello, and welcome to the Wildman Gaming and RageQuit channel, and today we are playing the Operational Art of War 4, a video game on the personal computer that simulates hex grid map wargame battles, usually based on actual historical battles. I have not played this game for a long time, and I noticed that our videos of this game featuring Arracourt 1944 have been getting a lot of views, and rightly so, as this is an interesting game to play. So let's get started. I mentioned before that Operational Art of War 4 gives a lot of value. Its many scenarios give players many games for the price of one. We already played Arracourt 1944 twice. You can check out our videos of that in our playlist. Link to pop out in our card at the end of this video. I'm actually intimidated not only by the sheer number of scenarios and wargames in this game, but also by the length of the scenarios that I need to choose carefully and decide if I can actually devote the amount of time to playing long scenarios. Arracourt 1944 is an 8-turn scenario. Today we play another short scenario of similar length, Crete 1941. I don't know much about the battle, and I learned of it first because I was searching through the video game scenarios and found it to have a relatively short 8-turn length. I heard from a family member that he read a book called Kidnap in Crete about an Allied operation to kidnap a German general in Crete. Although the kidnapping was done in 1944 when Crete was already occupied by the Germans. This scenario is based on the invasion of May 20, 1941. I looked up an article on the battle in the Imperial War Museum website, www.iwm.org.uk, on what was the Battle of Crete. I'll refer to what I learned from the article, but in case I misread or misunderstood the article, any mistakes here are my own. If you find any inaccuracy in my discussion, I thank you in advance for all your helpful corrections. So here we play as the defending British, Dominion, and Greek forces against the invading Germans. I gather that the commander of the forces, Major General Freiberg, VC, from New Zealand, had anticipated an attack from the sea. However, as the game opens, we find the Germans are dropping in by air. I think here the German invasion plan headed by Luftwaffe, General Kurt student, is to avoid confrontation by sea invasion and surprise the defending forces by airdrop. I can see some of the benefits to the German invasion strategy. 1. A sea invasion might be more difficult if the defenders are waiting at the shore. 2. Airdrops will bypass defenders on the shore and attack from inland. 3. Speed. Airdrops are faster than sea travel. But what would airborne units do once they land in Crete? I think the answer is to land just enough to take over the airfields of Crete. Why? So that more men and heavier war equipment may be flown in from Greece, further strengthening the invasion into a full occupation force. So once again, here's an interesting strategy. Notice how a small step is planned to grow into a big force. 1. Parachute troops. 2. Take over airfields. 3. Fly in more troops and heavy equipment. I foresee it would of course turn into 4. Occupy seaports, and 5. Ship in even more troops and heavier equipment. Historically, there was a miscalculation by the defending force of assuming a sea invasion which left the airfield of Malines relatively exposed. Unfortunately, I committed the same mistake, except the computer AI failed to exploit it. Furthermore, the defenders in the real battle had failed to retake Malines, while in the game, I ordered the garrison to dig in, entrench, and fortify the airfield, and to hold it at all costs. Yes, I set all airfield garrisons to ignore losses. When the Germans landed, I tried to hold screening forces between my occupied airfields and to make the Germans lose time for each hex that they take closer to the objectives. However, I noticed that I do not have any expected reinforcements. I also think that my logistical rating is not optimal. So I must carefully choose my attacks and battles and avoid suffering huge losses. I pick my battles by attacking weak and exposed units. On the defense, if the hexagon is a screening force, if it contained one of my screening forces, for example, and it's blocking the way to an objective, it is not itself a victory objective, and it is not critical to maintaining supply of a victory objective, then I am content to dig in but to order the unit to minimize losses. My plan is that the unit will resist as much as possible but withdraw to save troops and equipment. At the same time, I also set some units in the rear as local and tactical reserves. Now, I still have trouble telling the difference, but I just set it so that reserve units that are right behind the screening forces are set to local reserve. My expectation is that when adjacent units are having trouble while under attack, local reserves will join the battle and turn the tide of a losing defense. Tactical reserves are a little further into the rear, and I expect them to activate and travel a little further to support battles further away, giving them a larger coverage of support area on the battle map. How did the game play out? Was it exciting? Some people might argue that all I did was hunker down and wait for the game to end. But to me, that did not necessarily make the scenario boring. At each turn, I was still worried about my exposed flank on Malines. I was also concerned whether my units would soon buckle under the constant attacks from the Germans, both from land and the air. German bombardments and the early interdiction missions actually scared me and probably kept me frozen in place for much of the game. Also, German air superiority and air support made me think twice about attacking hexes. I was particularly concerned about overplaying my hand and losing my forces. Imagine this, I had some well-defended hexes, and German attacks typically result in some sort of draw with 0% losses for each side. Although to me as defender, holding all the victory objectives, a draw was a victory with time on my side. If I took the chance and attacked the German hex and mistakenly commit forces when German air support enters the battle, I could lose my forces and substantially weaken my units, leaving them vulnerable to German attack the next turn. So I would like to think that the static defense illustrated in this video actually had a lot of tension behind the scenes where I agonized over whether it was time to strike back. Okay, we did identify some very vulnerable German units, some who lost their way and found themselves exposed in the front, some attack 1, defense 1 strength units alone. Yes, we ran them to the ground. Furthermore, I was still concerned that my screening units were being cut off from supply, so I still had to attack and make some breakthrough to maintain supply lines and keep the defending screening units fresh. Near the end of the game, too late I'm afraid, I actually tried to maneuver units behind the Germans in the hope of cutting them off. I felt I only had 2 units to spare because I was also afraid that there might be more German parachute units coming to reinforce the attack, or even envelope or outflank the defending forces. However, I ran out of time and I did not find out whether closing up behind the Germans would cut them from supply. Since they are air units or airborne units, they were probably supplied by air and not by land, so enveloping them might not affect German logistical supply. In addition, when I activated display supply, I don't think I could identify any German supply sources. So we did hunker down and played a careful game until time ran out for Germans, scoring an overwhelming victory for the defending forces. How about you? Would you have performed more maneuvers and made more counterattacks? Let's talk about it in the comments below. And let us know if you are interested in watching more games and more scenarios in our future videos. We hope you enjoyed this short gameplay video summary. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, and tap the bell notification icon below. And check out more exciting videos and playlists. Thank you for watching, and see you next time!